Welcome to Next to Madison, a podcast to help you live your best life.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Next to Madison. I am your host, Madison Malloy, and on today's episode, I am sitting down with a hilarious speaker and comedian, Pamela Rae Schuller. She is awesome. She is going to share her story of having Tourette's and how it led her to stand-up comedy and how she is now inspiring people all around the world, from middle school kids all the way up to people in corporations, about embracing what makes you different. And we talk about, dealing with her condition and how important it is to be able to ask for help. We all need help, and it's important to be able to ask for that. It's not a form of weakness. She goes into that, the importance of self-love and being authentic, how to stay positive. This episode is funny. It's inspirational. I got a little inappropriate with some of my jokes. So that's always fun when I do that, because I feel like I've been a little too clean lately. So I'll gotta bring it back. But yeah, so we will be right back after this brief message on Next to Madison. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, share with your friends, all that stuff. We recently had to, back in August, update our RSS feed. So please resubscribe if you haven't, and share it with all your friends. I would love that. Love it so much. So we will be right back.
Hey, it's Madison Malloy. I just wanted to remind you to make sure you grab a copy of my book, Time to Lighten the Fuck Up. It is a great, funny self-help book that is going to help you get out of your own way. I have already helped thousands and thousands of people, and they are on their way to living their dream life, and I want every listener to be able to live their dream life as well. So grab a copy of the book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or even the audiobook on Audible. Now back to the show.
We are back with our amazing, funny, talented guest, Pamela Rae Schuller. How are you, my dear?
Great. How are you?
I am good. I'm so excited that you're here. You are a very funny comedian, but you're also a speaker, and you're also a disability advocate. So how did you get into all this?
So I kind of combined the three. And at different points in my life, I was kind of focusing on one or the other, and they've all kind of come together at this point in my life. But not such a short story, but I was an asshole, and I got shipped away to boarding school, and they put me in stand-up. And slowly over time, I started also talking about having a lot of Tourette syndrome and obsessive compulsive disorder, and being 4'6.5". And then over time, I got a master's degree, and over it, kind of everything came together. And now I combine the three passions.
Well, I love that. I love that, because you've been doing comedy for a while. That's how you and I know each other.
Yeah.
So how was so you were doing stand-up when you were at boarding school? Is that when you started it?
Boarding school, realized that I was depressed and struggling. My disability was so severe, but more than that, I identified as being a waste of space. I was really not okay. And they caught on, and they were the ones that put me on a journey to find something I loved about myself. And they knew I was funny. I didn't know it yet. My first year at boarding school, they forced me to write letters of apology to everyone that I was inappropriate to. And the letters, they gifted them back to me. They're hilarious. They knew I was funny. I didn't know it yet. And so they made me try a bunch of things, and pretty quickly they put me in stand-up, and I've been into it ever since.
So you obviously must be very thankful to that.
I am. Yeah. If I ever have money, I'll give it back to that boarding school.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay. So where did you grow up and why did your parents ship you to boarding school? They just couldn't deal?
Yes. Yeah. So I grew up in the Midwest, Ohio, Indiana area. And boarding school was in Vermont, a hippy dippy town in Burlington, Vermont, which was great. And my Tourette's was severe, so public school didn't know what to do with me. I didn't fit into a box. I was smart, and I had no control over my body and the noises that I made. My Tourette's was really severe as a kid. And that mixed with I just had a mom, and she was just at the end. She, it's tough to raise a teenager at all, let alone one who is struggling, depressed. I often would blame things on Tourette's that had nothing to do with Tourette's, right? My mom would be like, clean your room. And I'd be like, I have Tourette's, which I still say to her when I'm home. Now it's just an excuse. But I think it was everything came together, and I had to get out.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Tourette syndrome, because I think this is something that people kind of hear about, but they don't really know a lot about it. So how did you know you had it? When did it start? And how does it kind of manifest for you? And how do you deal with it?
It's the best of the neurological disorders. Like I could not have asked for a better neurological disorder for me if I tried. 10 out of 10. Um, so my mom, when I was a kid, I used to do professional theater, and my mom was watching an episode of the Maury Povich show, which, depending on the age of the listener right now, is on if this will have any meaning or not. And do you remember the Maury Povich show?
I do.
So he was doing an episode on Tourette's, and I was in like second grade, and my mom was like, "Oh my God, that's what she has." It got me diagnosed a week later. So my neurologist diagnosed me, but her like light bulb moment was the Maury Povich show. And for anyone who doesn't know that, it's like if Ellen DeGeneres and Jerry Springer had a baby, I think is like the best way to describe that show.
That is such a
trash with a message.
Yeah, exactly. So explain to people like that don't know what Tourette's is, because I think people like see it where it's just like uncontrollable outbursts, but I don't know if that's really what it is.
So I like to say out of every 5 people with Tourette's, only one has the additional diagnosis of yelling words or phrases. But that's like what South Park and TikTok all made us believe Tourette's was. In reality, it's a neurological disorder, and it means that I do movements and noises that I cannot control. And that's all of us do that, right? We all have uncontrollable and repetitive movements and noises. Some of us also yell words and phrases from Tourette's. Most of us don't. And for me, it manifests differently at any point in my life. Right now, like recently, it's my face. You'll maybe see it in my eyes, but it's mostly my arms and hands. Stomach muscles are constantly tensing, but it shifts. And Tourette's at some points in my life, I mean, as a kid, it was so severe. I threw my head back so hard I broke my own neck.
Oh my gosh.
Out of school for years. So for me, it's always kind of shifting in the way I feel it and the way the world responds to it and the way the world sees it.
Okay. And so how was it growing up with this? Were you able, like, were they nice? How did you fit in?
They weren't mean. I was isolated. I struggled more with the adults in my world. I think kids want to be inclusive, which is why I love doing keynotes at schools, because they just have questions. Kids want to, they were scared. So I wasn't invited to the parties. I often sat alone at meals until boarding school. Adults struggled because for an adult in a public school system, I was more work for them. I was disruptive. So that was the big thing. But I just remember feeling really isolated as a kid and a lot of physical pain from Tourette's. So it was both of those things kind of working together. I like to say that I lived as an outsider in my own world for longer than I should have.
Yeah, but it seems like that you're such a positive glass half full person that it's like you took it and you made it into such a miracle and a blessing, and it's really transformed. Your career is just booming.
So some days, anytime you work for yourself, you're always like, it could end at any given moment. One dumb thing I do goes viral and it's over. But I definitely am now a positive person, but I also, it's really important to me to remember that like I can hold 2 things at the same time. So there are still days, months where Tourette's sucks and it hurts and it's painful and embarrassing. And I'm still going to work on loving who I am. I'm still going to, be kind to myself. And so both of those things can be true.
Okay. I do love that, because self-love is such a big thing, right? It's like you can't love other people until you truly love yourself. So let's go into the self-love aspect of it and things you do and other people can do to really love themselves, because that's so important.
And hard. It's easier said than done to like take care of yourself. Can I ask what you do? What are your things?
For self-love, masturbation. I'm just kidding.
Great one.
No, I think it's affirmations, self-care, like going to the gym, eating healthy, trying not to criticize myself. For a while, like really, when I was really heavy into stand-up, I would be so hard on myself if I didn't have a good set, and I'd beat myself up. I wasn't good enough, and And now it's like giving myself more credit for doing the best I can every day, but making sure that I'm actually doing the best that I can. Just being easier on myself, realizing that life can end at any moment. Like God here was the eye-opening thing was like, God made us perfect in his eyes and his vision. So every time we bash ourselves, we're bashing his creation. And that was a big reminder for me to be like, okay, be nicer to yourself, be nicer to yourself.
That's good. Yeah. My big thing is ask for help when I need it. I
I
just feel
love that.
society makes you feel like asking for help is weak. And I think it's my biggest strength. I, for a long time, I felt really uncomfortable and out of shape in a way that like I had to stress if I was going to be hanging out with friends and a lot of walking would be involved. And so I hired a trainer. I asked for help. I didn't know how to start working out. So I asked for help. I essentially dated neurologists till I found one that I loved and gave me agency. And now I'm a ride or die for my neurologist.
Yeah.
I go to therapy when I need it. When my Tourette's is really affecting like the pain in my arms, I go to occupational therapy. So I ask for help. That's like my biggest thing that I think other people can do. And I also know that there's like a level of privilege of pulling therapy and things like that in, but more and more there are opportunities that exist that don't cost a lot.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's so true. People are afraid to ask for help, and we are all on a journey, but you can't go do it alone.
Mm-mm. And I still am mean to myself after shows where I bomb.
Yeah.
Anyone who's like, if you have a conversation with a comedian and they say to you, I don't ever bomb on stage, they're lying. We've seen, we've
Yeah.
seen the top best comedians just eat shit on, like it has to happen. And so I remind myself of that like, I think I just posted on Instagram yesterday that if you've gotten negative feedback to your art, you're in great company.
Yes. No, it's true. And it's so true. It's like you're not, and true as a comedian, you are not growing unless you are failing because the only way to really grow is from your mistakes and your failures. So
You have to be cringe. Like you have to be sometimes. Like I, for so many years, was so afraid of putting out some art before it was ready because it might feel cringe. It's gonna feel cringe. Like you just gotta lean into it a little bit.
yeah, it's like taking that risk. So let's talk about your comedy. Like, where do you drive your humor from?
My own world, a lot of it. I being 4'6.5", having Tourette syndrome, obsessive compulsive disorder. I have a family that is just constant entertainment. We are loud. We are, my niece loves that I write stand up about her, but my world, and then I try to make it relatable. Not everyone barks on first dates, but everyone's had an awkward moment on a first date. I'll just tell the story about me barking through it.
Wait, what? Okay, we have to hear this story now.
I mean, it's happened more than once, but when I get nervous, Tourette's likes to show up for the fun. And so if I'm going to bark, I'm going to bark. It's Tourette's. And so I've absolutely barked on first dates.
What does that mean? Can you bark for us now?
No, because if I start, I won't be able to stop. So if I choose
Oh, don't do that. Okay.
I will say that not a ton of people have heard me bark. A few first dates, my family, because it's like usually just when I'm really tired late at night. Not a ton of people have heard me bark because it doesn't happen every day. I have tons of stories about barking though, in situations it's gotten me in, but my best friend finally heard me bark after being friends for 10 years. She had never heard it. And she goes, I did not expect you to be a small dog.
Oh my gosh, how cute is that?
It's like a loud, high-pitched bark. I always, I assume I'm a big dog, but I'm not. I'm a small little yippy dog.
I love the small dogs. Wait, so when you're on dates, do you explain to them what you have prior?
Sometimes I will always work twitchy into conversation usually, but I don't feel the need to label on dates, like especially if it's
Yeah.
not going well. I don't need to disclose to this dude that I have Tourette's if I'm never gonna see him again. And
Yeah.
we know pretty quickly if there's chemistry. And
Yeah.
typically dudes don't care that I have Tourette's, and I'm like, I don't think they care. I also keep dating comedians, so they know immediately.
Well,
They-
you're also like you have a great confidence about you and you own it. And when you own who you are, that is so beautiful and hot.
It's
You know,
newer. I'm still leaning into it and figuring out my confidence because feel like society is always telling me I'm not supposed to feel sexy and confident. Like I have a disability. I'm different. But I've decided, screw it. I'm going to feel, and I don't every day, but I've started really like leaning into my like, sexy, sometimes confidence, sometimes.
Yeah. No, and so wait, do you take medication for this or?
I get Botox for Tourette's.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
I get Botox and I don't have Tourette's.
It's the best. I get it. Insurance covers my Botox.
Oh my gosh.
So good. I get it in my arms and hands and then around my face. But a few times ago, I was at my neurologist and I pointed to the part between my eyebrows. And I said, this also ticks. And he goes, Pam, I don't think that ticks. And I said, this also ticks. And he gave me some Botox right there. So I got it for free.
I love it. Really? So when did they discover that Botox was the treatment for Tourette's?
Not a ton of people are doing it for Tourette's, but Botox is being used more and more medically, and it's been around for a long, long time. I think even before it was being used, because I think that's how they found out that it like freezes your face, was that it was being used for muscle spasms. So people get Botox for migraines, I have someone else in my family who has muscle spasms of her legs and gets it there. I just found out. I have a friend who has like eye spasms and she gets Botox. And it's really, because I struggle with the side effects of medications, like a lot of medications. Tourette's meds when I was younger is why I gained from Tourette's meds 130 pounds over 2 years as a kid, because the side effects just really messed up my system. And they also just don't make me feel great. For some people, they work wonders, and for me, they don't. And so Botox has been like light. I mean, I still have it. I still feel the ticks, but it dulls how hard I'm able to tick. And since being on Botox, I haven't had any significant injuries from Tourette's.
Oh, that's wonderful.
It's been cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Gosh, yeah. I was like, yeah, Botox is, I remember it's that people say like they use it for sweating in your armpits, and then they'll use it for headaches. And so I always laugh. I'm like, no wonder I don't get migraines. Maybe I'm totally prone, but I just never let them come on.
You were like, let's stop that before they happen.
Right, exactly. I need to tell my insurance company immediately. Be like, I have migraines. Yeah, exactly. Be like, this is important.
I'm gonna go study on how filler also cures Tourette's.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So let's talk about the transition into public speaking and how you're able to kind of bridge comedy and speaking into one.
It started, I mean, I've been doing comedy for years, and I've always been articulate about my experience having Tourette's. Yeah. And then I got a master's in advocacy and a few other degrees, and people started asking me to come speak. At first, it was like a TEDx type talk that they wanted me to just talk about inclusion. And I had a coach. I wrote the whole speech. It wasn't funny, but I did what they wanted me to do. Like 3 or 4 days before it, I had a full meltdown. And I was like, this doesn't feel authentic to me. I'm a comedian.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't feel like me. And so like 3 days before it, and it was, again, I was being flown across the country, live TV studio audience for a taping. I rewrote the entire thing. Nobody heard it but my sister's dog. I only rehearsed it for my sister's dog. And I essentially just infused stories that were funny and my personality and rewrote it. And I gave it to the audience, and I watched everyone laugh and cry. It's like a 13-minute talk. And then someone came up to me and said, you better build a website because people are going to start asking you to do this. And between filming and that coming out, I had like 7 months. So I took that 13-minute talk and made it 45 minutes. That was like 8 years ago. And then since then, I now have probably 60 versions. I've got, corporate talks. I've got college, middle school, high school, like late night college, clean college. I've got ones that are like squeaky clean. I've just everything. And it's all comedy mixed with storytelling and a message of like loving what makes you, you. But the message is different according to the audience. Sometimes it's kind of heavier mental health. Sometimes it's inclusion.
I love that. So you had a coach originally for the speech, and then you kind of taught yourself how to speak and write.
Yeah, because something I've realized is like there can be someone who really knows what they're doing, but doesn't mean they know what they're doing in an authentic way to you. She was a great coach. She
Yeah.
absolutely was speaking. She didn't know what was authentic to me. And so working with her was so beneficial because I think it got me to the point of realizing that I wasn't being myself. And that's like, you have to go on that journey. So in no way was she unhelpful. I'm still so thankful for her. And that organization that gave me that talk, I still keep in great contact with them. But
Yeah.
I had to like go through this realization of like, in my mind, comedy was different from my advocacy work. Comedy and my advocacy were two separate avenues. And that day when I had that, I want to say a meltdown, it was when I realized that my dream world is where those are the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I love that word, authentic, because that's where people relate to you. And that's where you're able to spread more of an impactful message, is when you're just authentically you. And I just love, one of the things I've always admired about you is just your confidence, and you just own who you are. And it's just the most beautiful, beautiful thing.
Thank you. And I always want to remind people that like, I'm not always this confident. There are days I'm less confident. And that's when I ask for help because I know what it feels like to be a version of me that I'm really enjoying being. And so if I can
Yeah.
pull in some folks to get back to that point, I will.
Yeah. And I think people, when going back to that, like asking for help, people genuinely do want to help. Like, how good do you feel when somebody's like, hey, I really value your opinion. Could you help me with something? Or I really value like your knowledge in this. And people genuinely want to give back. Like, I think that like giving is better than receiving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, sometimes it means budgeting for support. So I've got a keynote coming up and it's something I've never done before. And I I know I could make it great, but I want it to be undeniable. I want to like
Mm-hmm.
nail it harder than And so I'm going to hire a coach to just help me make sure that this new keynote I'm creating is as good as I can possibly make it. And so I put some money aside to like hire someone to work with me for a few hours, especially because it's a corporate keynote.
Yeah.
And I want someone to make sure that I'm like I'm not going in and so clearly not in the corporate space anymore. And so I want to
Yeah.
make sure I'm bridging those worlds.
No, I love that. And so how do you prepare for a keynote? No, I mean, without a coach, like what's your prep? Because preparing for that and a comedy show, very different.
They are, but there's like a level that's the same because you can think of a keynote like a story, right? You want a beginning, a middle, and end. You want it to hit, like, you want the right emotions. You want to keep people's attention. You don't want to let stories go on too long. And I try to make sure that like there's humor throughout the whole thing. So I kind of prepare it like I might a
Yeah.
15-minute comedy like set, right? Like I'm thinking through the peaks and the moments, and there's always a piece that's similar. I always start with sharing my story. And then according to like what the show is and who's going to be there is kind of how I put the other parts together. But I almost think of it like a puzzle where I'm doing it right now. I have a big show tomorrow. And so I, this morning sat on my computer with iced coffee and I looked at all of my material and well, I've been doing it, but I'm finalizing now. And I pulled out the pieces that I think this community would really like. And then I met with them and I asked what their goals were. And I'm making sure that everything I do connects back to their goals.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I think people that aren't in the public speaking world, they don't realize that really the foundation of public speaking is your stories. And the painting the picture of the story. Like, what did they say? What did you say? How did you feel? How did they feel? Like really painting that image. I think I heard from somebody that said if you have 7 great stories, you're a 7-figure speaker.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, 7 great stories. And it was like, whoa. And I remember going to a speaking seminar once, and it was like, just, what was your first kiss? What was your first heartbreak? What was your first this? And it was just topics that you can pull if you're trying to come up with some sort of speech, whether you're speaking at a funeral or a wedding or a graduation or doing it for a living. It's the moments that changed you, and then that story that drives around it.
If it matters to you, it's going to matter to someone else.
And it's always the stories you don't want to tell.
Yeah, which I think is why I
Right.
watch people cry, because you've got to relive moments that life would be a little easier if I didn't relive some of those, the hardest moment of my life.
And what was that hardest moment?
There are a few that I can point to. There was one in particular that I tell often. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but essentially, I broke a bone from having Tourette's. And people saw it happen as a kid, but my Tourette's was so severe that they didn't know how I communicated. And so kind of just everyone kind of stepped back and waited for someone who knew me to deal with it, and nobody ever helped. And I remember essentially on the ground in a parking lot at school, surrounded by buses, and watching people walk away because they didn't know how I communicated, and they thought, someone who knows her should be the one to help. And just feeling so incredibly alone. But there were also, I have memories of middle school of just like desperately wanting to have a friend on a Saturday night. And I remember we had this little orange phone book of all of our middle school names and numbers. And I had like the 15 kids that were kind of nice to me circled. And I just remember calling them all and trying to like do anything with a friend, and just nobody was. And so then at boarding school filmed a whole video about that moment and like started turning that into art, of like that feeling of sitting on the floor and just desperately wanting to have a friend.
I mean, that must have been so heartbreaking, not only for you, but also for your parents.
In the moment, I don't remember it being heartbreaking. I remember just like, I don't think I realized how heartbreaking it was. I think looking back, heartbreaking. I think in the moment, lonely. But now I also we see those stories that go viral of kid, who's on the autism spectrum, invited his whole class to his birthday party and nobody came. And then all of the firefighters came, and everyone's like, that's a beautiful story. No, the beautiful story is if we're working with schools to make sure that doesn't happen. It shouldn't, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Yes, it turned out okay, but it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Kids with disabilities are often socially isolated, and it's because kids it's scary what we don't know. And so that's why, yes, I love doing those corporate gigs, but I will always make time for a middle school or high school show, because I think that's where the change happens. And if we get them there, then we get them when they're in a corporate environment. They've got the lessons, they know.
So how is it when you go into the schools? Like, are the kids, are they friendly? Do they have kids with disabilities that they share stories about, or?
Kids, well, middle school shows, their default is they hate me until I start, and I win them over. I love those shows because I also am not trying to be anything I'm not. I just have fun. I speak to them like they're adults. I'm not inappropriate, but I'm telling my story. And middle school kids will line up after the show 100% of the time and share with me their story. And sometimes it's about them having disability. More often than not, it's just them feeling different. A friend feels different. A family member feels different. I've had kids share everything. I've kids share with me that their parents are getting divorced and they feel sad and alone. Like it's not necessarily disability. It's anything that makes them feel on the outside. High school shows, I often get permission to be a little edgier and do a little more stand-up. And those are just so much fun. Every now and again, I get one that just kicks my butt. But I would say 99% of the time, I love those shows.
Oh, that is fun. Yeah. But yeah, you're really, really making an impact.
I hope so.
Comedians make an impact because they make people laugh and forget about whatever they're dealing with. But like, you have taken it to another level.
That's the goal. I hope.
Yeah, no, you are, you 100% are. There's people that are, the dick jokes and whatever, and it's all funny and it's great. I mean, shit, I love a good dick joke. I feel like I'm a walking dick joke. You know what I mean? Like I'm sitting here, like somebody said, I wasn't even at a comedy show. I sat down and somebody was like, oh, we're running joking around. They're like, we need a new madam for our prostitution ring. I'm like, oh, perfect. I'm sick of sucking dick for free, and it's just, and I'm like, wait, this is a business meeting, but they started it. This is not,
I love
my fault. They gave me a layup and I just slammed the ball. So, right. But like, I don't feel that like those necessarily, maybe I've like saved some women from putting out when they don't need to, or doing it for the right reasons, not the wrong reasons. Yeah. But they're like, legit changing people's lives. Like, I wrote a self-help book and I'm hoping I'm changing people's lives, like through my own challenges, but
Far.
you're just like at such another level.
But I also still do shows where I'm in a basement or at a New York comedy club and just doing the most inappropriate content. I sometimes after like being on tour and doing middle school and high school shows and corporate shows, the pendulum has to swing. And so when I get back to New York, sometimes I will not say yes to shows unless it's an anything goes situation. And I know that like it's not going to be on camera and I can like I have 20 minutes of jokes about disability dating. None of it's clean.
Oh, I'm sure, right? Like, wait, I have to ask you this because you're a comedian. I feel like I can go there. Like, does this ever happen when you're having intimacy?
So I've had teens ask me this, by the way. I have I have a clip online of a teenager asking me this. And I was like, yeah, you went there. My kind of rule of thumb is Tourette's doesn't necessarily change activity to activity. What it is that day is what it is that day. Okay. So if it's a bad Tourette's day and I have a guy over, it's going to be a bad Tourette's day. But yeah, I guess if I'm super focused, it often does calm down a little bit. So maybe the other direction, it kind of cools it down.
Yeah.
And
do you have a joke that you can share with us? I know it's like stand-up so different, and I hate this question. Stand-up, like, tell me a joke. It's like, come to a show, you idiot.
Yeah, come to a show.
do you have like one sort of like kind of story that's like your favorite about your inappropriate disability hookup thing that you could share with us?
Probably, but
this isn't anything go show.
I'll tell you this one. I was on Netflix's Jewish matchmaking. So I dated on camera on a reality TV.
Yes, I remember this.
And I love this because no one knew I was like, I did not audition to be a part of this. They saw me perform in LA and asked me to do the show, but I still had to go through like producers and all of that. And so I hadn't told my world that I was considering doing this. And I got a call one morning that I was going to be on the show. And I called my family, and it was my mom and sister. And I did like a 3-way call with us. And I said, just letting you know, I'm going to be on a Netflix dating series. And my whole family simultaneously said, Love on the Spectrum.
Oh, wait, is that even a show?
I love that story. But also what a like statement of like, we don't see disabilities in dating on TV unless it's the same disability. Down with Love is about folks with Down syndrome dating. Yeah, it's like they like clump us together as opposed to like, I'm twitchy. Sometimes I date dudes with disabilities. Sometimes I don't. Like,
yeah. So how did that show turn out for you?
I didn't find love.
Yeah.
But I had a good time. And I think I learned, or I think I was like, I'm single right now. I can be honest about that.
Yeah.
But if you know of any guy, 30s, 40s, or 50s who's into like a quirky, loud, twitchy woman, please give my name and information.
Okay. Listeners, pay attention to that. She's amazing. She's doing very well.
But also be doing well on your own, you know, not necessarily financially, but like
she's not going to support you, but she can support herself. Let's put it that way. But it'd be nice if you could support her too.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like, I love things that I don't want to have to buy.
Yes, totally.
It was helpful to be intentional about my dating life. It was helpful. I've been so career focused. First, I was like, let's work on myself. And then I was like, now let's work on my career. And so I'm a little behind in the dating world. It's kind of new, not new, but the last few years that I've really made this a focus. And so I think having to sit down with producers and the matchmaker and be like, no, I thought about it and I pulled my closest friends and this is what we think I need was helpful because I hadn't really put the work into thinking about that.
Yeah. No. And so do you keep in touch with anyone from the show?
The matchmaker and I keep in touch. Aliza, she's lovely. I do keep in touch with the guy they put me on a date with, but more as like a friend. Yeah. Trying to think. I happen to know one of the other cast members. Two of the cast members came to a stand-up show in New York recently. So yeah, like loosely. The producer, one of the producer showrunner, and I've been in a little bit of touch. I saw him at something. So yes, I wouldn't say like life-changing connections, but it was fun.
Yeah, so it was like a good experience. But how authentic are those shows really? Or is a lot of it kind of staged?
I think it's authentic. I think I was authentic, but I'm used to being on camera. So for me, walking into a room filled with cameras, I'm still pretty comfortable being myself. I think if that's not something you're comfortable with, I can see it being really tough. So like
Okay.
it's weird. It looks like there's other people there, but there's not.
So
They're all
these are
that's weird.
these are real dates?
They put me on a real date, but they had rented out a whole restaurant with ping pong in Chicago. And so no one else was there except producers and camera crew. So anyone else who like looks like they're playing ping pong is not. They're miming ping pong as to not ruin the noise. So in the sense that like we met for the first time, it was a date, it was on camera, that's real. And
Yeah.
there's like circumstances around that make it feel very strange. Like you'll say something and then they'll be like, wait, can you do that again?
Yeah.
And in real life, that doesn't happen. But I
Uh,
did find out I'm more comfortable dating on camera than off. I
that's
understand
funny.
cameras. Real life dating is scarier.
Yeah, you're like, I need this angle here. Oh, and what's good about on camera dating, right, is that you get great lighting.
Yeah.
You don't get great lighting on dates. Sometimes like I'll sit down at a table on a date and I'm like under a light. I'm like, seriously, this is not good for anybody.
I like wore an outfit that I felt really cute in. I don't know if you saw it, but I wore like a hot yellow cheerleading skirt.
I
And I don't wear
remember you
color.
posting that. Yeah,
I
that is.
felt fun.
I mean,
And
you are fun, and you're such an inspiration, and I do love that. So before we wrap up, because I know we got to wrap up, I want you to tell us about your tips to stay positive, because you're a very positive person, at least now.
I think the big thing one of my favorites that I already said is like two things at the same time. Shit can be kicking like you can be struggling, you can be going through it, and you can still be practicing self-care. At the very least, like working on loving who you are and what makes you you, working to own it. Both of those can happen at the same time. You don't have to wait for one. I think for years I was waiting for the hard parts to go away before I started loving myself. And I'd rather kind of live in the middle. So that's a big one. And I often share this, but think about what you love about yourself. And if you don't have anything yet, that's okay. Start a journey to figure out what you love about yourself. Because I on stage tell the story of finding the first thing I loved about myself, and it was my sense of humor. And this
Oh.
journey that I went on to find one thing I loved about myself, and how even when things are hard, I'm reminded that there's parts of me that I really, really love. And even when Tourette's gets hard, I'm reminded that like, but my brain also has really added to my life, and my brain has Tourette's, and maybe those things aren't not connected, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Makes
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. But you just have such a great energy, and yeah, I do love that. I think, yeah, encourage everybody, you guys listening, find something that you really do love about yourself, because in God's eyes, you are perfect. So don't bash yourself, because you're bashing the creator. It's always a good reminder.
Yeah.
My mother told me that years ago when I was like, I wish I had better whatever. I don't remember. A bigger ass, a flatter ass, I don't know what I was complaining about. Just bullshit, right? Who knows? And she was like, well, you're perfect in God's eyes. You're bad. And I was like, whoa, that was a wake-up call. But no, this is fabulous. You're amazing. I just love you to death. I haven't seen you for so long. We have to get together and do a show.
I would love that. Between the two of us, I feel like we have a lot of energy. We'd be like
Yes,
a hurricane.
exactly. You
We'd
can
come
help
in
me
like a wrecking
more.
ball.
Yeah, and you can help me more with my like doing more of my keynotes on confidence and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Anytime.
so I would love that. I would love that. All right, so where can people find you, follow you, give us all that stuff?
My Instagram is at Pamela Comedy, and my website is pamelacomedy.com. And if you literally look up Pamela Tourette's, I'm going to come up. So I'm not hard to find.
I love you. I love you. You're the best. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, this is amazing. And thank you, everybody who is listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time to find out who's next. Hey, your host here, Madison Malloy. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on all podcast platforms, and please rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify. Also, if you have any questions or comments, you can email us at contact@nexttomadison.com. I thank you again for listening. Bye.